Alrighty, it is Wednesday. It is the Coito show, and it's another great show. You know, it doesn't matter if it's football season. It doesn't matter if it's basketball season. It doesn't matter what season it is, because here on the Coito show, we're going to be talking about all of the latest and most important topics in the world of sports, and definitely one of the most important topics in the world of sports as something that is the most important in the entire world right now, and that is COVID-19 and the vaccine. And we're going to talk about why that vaccine in particular is so important to getting fans back in the stands. In a few minutes, I'm going to bring on Dr. Josh Albrektson. And Dr. Albrektson, I have kind of got to know him more as an online. I'm not sure if we ever met in person. I originally got to meet him through LAFC. You know, I got my LAFC flag right behind me. But aloha, Bradley. Mahalo for joining. If you're watching on Facebook Live, we're every Wednesday night, 5 p.m. Hawaii time, 7 p.m. right now in California, but we're going to spring forward in LA and on the West Coast soon. But 7 o'clock in California right now and 10 on the East Coast. And, you know, you're going to have to just do your own math from there. But wherever you're coming from, know that you can also hear the show on podcasts on the Hawaii Sports Fans channel. So if you are listening possibly right now, mahalo for listening and subscribing. Follow us, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you listen to podcasts. I know Bradley listens on every different channel that Hawaii Sports Fans is published on. So mahalo for the support, Bradley. And today we're going to bring on Dr. Josh Albrektson, like I said, and he is a huge LA fan. First of all, this guy is a fan, a huge sports fan. He was, you know, I talk about being one of the LAFC originals, right? And those are the people who put down deposits before, you know, everybody else. Like before there was a team, even before there was a coach, right? They were just trying to recruit fans. So I was one of those, and I'm super proud of that. But he was even more original than me, even before me. And I have a bunch of friends that, you know, were there from the very beginning. And that's the cool part about being a part of the beginning of a team. And you know, LAFC, for instance, are having our first game in 2018. I got to be there for the very first game, and it's so cool to have one of my teams and be able to say I was there from the very beginning. But he is also one of those guys there from the very beginning. He's also a LA Chargers season ticket holder as well, and a guy that's a big Chargers fan. He is a trash talking Chargers fan even, so you might hear a little bit of, you know, as a Chiefs fan, I got, like I said, immediately after the game, as hard as it is even today, reflecting on that Super Bowl, it is difficult sometimes to you know, have to eat it, but sometimes you gotta as a fan, you know. But as a Chargers fan, he sure is feeling good about his Chargers, and they should. I mean, having Justin Herbert, having a good team, playing in SoFi as well. So there's some, you know, optimism there. But Bradley is also a Chargers guy, so he will love to hear what Dr. Josh Albrektson has to say. And he also talks about, you know, his experience at the Super Bowl. He got to be there. He was one of the 7,500 people, healthcare officials that were selected to attend Super Bowl 55. And not only was he able to attend in Tampa, but he was flown out there as well. So, and he talks about why he was chosen, and out of, you know, so many healthcare workers, you know, the reason he was chosen. And he was featured in the LA Times. He was featured in the OC Register, so the major newspapers of Southern California. And he, you know, has been a popular guy, at least since the beginning of the, you know, the pandemic. He's a guy, his posts, at least on Facebook, have been a place that I've turned to for, you know, facts. Just plain and simple. A doctor who, you know, uses CDC guidelines, who uses science, who uses data, who explains things on a level that is clear, but on a level that is also science-based, which is really important. And he, he'll talk about this, but one of the reasons why he was selected to attend the Super Bowl was because he was such a huge proponent of the vaccine trials. And he talks about the vaccine, and that's kind of going to be the theme of today, the vaccine, because and we're not going to talk necessarily about the vaccine itself, but how it relates to getting back into the groove of football season and, every season, not just football season, soccer season, basketball season, getting fans back the more and more and more, inch by inch. We're at 25% at most places. How can we get to 25%, 50%? And California's still at 0%. So he, Josh shares some optimism, which is really good to hear about when he sees California in particular, which is going to be one of the stingiest places, right, to get fans back in the stands. But it could be right around the corner. He talks about even later, this spring already having potential, limited capacity, and just by the rates we're going at right now. And he sees a ramp up too. He sees a ramp up of the vaccine and, how it's administered and delivered at a higher rate, and not only at a higher rate, but at a speed at which it is able to get to the masses rather than just a few whatever. Some places at 65 years and older. Some places, if certain jobs are getting the vaccine. Some places they prioritize certain groups. But he believes that by May 1st we'll have enough. At least in California, there'll be enough for everyone to be vaccinated, which would be a huge thing. And the biggest obstacles, to full vaccination is obviously, first of all, having the supply, which looks like there will be supply. But second, convincing people to take the vaccine. And he also, being a guy that's very open-minded and a guy that is, I can trust, as for in terms of the kind of information he shares on Facebook. He is understanding, at least, of why certain people will be a little bit, nervous about taking a vaccine. I personally would get the vaccine, and I say that right now, before I even talked to Josh today. I mean, it was something that I plan on doing, and I believe the vaccine is essential to getting us back to 100% fans in the stands. He even Josh will talk about how if every single person got the vaccine, he believes in 2 weeks the pandemic would be over, which theoretically it would be. We'll go down to zero, but we have to be honest. Not everybody's going to get the vaccine, and not everybody, will go along with the process, and that this is very much a process. So the COVID protocols that certain stadiums that have had a limited amount of capacity of fans, those stadiums have done very well in terms of holding true to those protocols and enforcing those protocols, and that's been important. But if we had the vaccine, man, you don't even need space out. We can go back to normal. So I think that I believe and I agree, and Josh will talk about that as well. But I really believe the vaccine is the way that we get back. And I know a lot of people will be skeptical and a lot of people will be nervous. I personally am not. I'm willing to take the vaccine. I believe in this vaccine at the speed at which that it was developed, and it was and the necessity of it being created for the benefit of all of mankind and the global predicament that we're in. I think it's important. But for sports, I even think it's more importanter, which is not really a word, but I really think it is. And I hope as a sports fan, you might be considering it more because it might be your passport to get into games. I'd read something about and this is a side thing, but Ticketmaster being in talks with a lab or something to be able to funnel results or verify results of ticket buyers in terms of whether they've been vaccinated. So there's a potential of that, in terms of purchasing tickets, having to verify your status. Just like when we go to Hawaii, if you travel right now, you have to verify that you are, have a negative test result via PCR test, or, you have some kind of whatever you can get around it exception, but you have to prove something before you can't just come to Hawaii and be able to step right off the plane and start your vacation or wherever. Even as a returning resident, you have to have documentation that you have had the test. So similarly, there's a possibility of that happening for entry into games, and Dr. Albrektson will talk about that as well. But this is an important topic, and now that more and more people are getting it, now that it's getting to the stage where not just kupuna or senior citizens are getting it, but your aunties and uncles and parents, and brothers and sisters now are starting to get the vaccine, and you're going to see some people that might not be as enthusiastic about getting the vaccine, but at the same time, we also need to be really vigilant of the fact that the numbers will reflect that. As the vaccine rates go up, the numbers will reflect that. The caseloads will reflect that. The number of cases positives will go down. That's just a science. That's just a proof. And that's how they, performed these vaccine trials. They gave some people placebos. They gave some people the vaccines. And when they came back in 6 months or whatever, for sure, some people will have the virus by then, by guarantee, just by the fact that the amount of people that they put in these trials. So they can tell by those numbers and extrapolate how effective these vaccines are by the numbers. So all of these things are based on science. And I think as NFL fans, we as NFL fans, I should say, myself included, people can, will have that a misconception that it's all about just getting to the game and watching football and drinking beer and everything else, and that's a part of it, obviously. But it's also people want to be safe. Even people that are skeptical want to be safe. Nobody wants to be unsafe. And for all the games that I went to, for sure, I was able to see how the community, the NFL fan base community, has really rallied around the protocols and done everything in their power to continue to keep the games going, because it's important to fans, but it's also important for the people around the country to have the games going, to be able to mark time by, to be able to have some sense of normalcy. So it means something for everybody. But I think Josh, Dr. Albrektson, I'll let him talk some more. But that's all I'll talk for now. So we'll turn it over to Josh, who talks about how he was selected to be one of the 7,500 healthcare workers. 7,500 medical workers that were selected, and just talk about that whole process.
Well, it's really cool. I'm a radiologist, so that means I'm not really high risk. But the reason I got chosen is because I got about 300 people into the clinical trials. So for Pfizer, Moderna, and all those things, they had to prove that the vaccine worked. And I searched for those trials, and I got 300. Like Anaheim, the clinical trial in Anaheim, I'm responsible for about 50%, 40% of the people that got there. And that's part of the reason I got chosen. It was great. Wow. They flew me out there. There is 3 other Charger people, and we had a concert with Miley Cyrus, and then we had the Super Bowl, and it was awesome. So can't complain.
Well, I was outside. I couldn't get into the concert, but I was there at the Super Bowl, and I saw some of you guys in there congregating. And as you were coming out, as the concert ended, I was taking a picture with the Lombardi, and I saw you all for the first time. You had your gold kind of lanyards on, and you
Yeah.
had your vaccinated stickers. So, you know, you
And
were
it was
kind of
great because the
standing out.
Chiefs lost, so it
Yeah.
was all like it was amazing in every way, shape, or form. I couldn't have hoped for a better thing. I mean, it was like amazing how bad the Chiefs were. I mean, as a Chargers fan, it was like the best we could possibly hope for them because I mean they were pathetic. Oh my god, it was
Well, we
horrific.
won't go there with the game, but
Oh, we won't go there.
no, we
No,
won't
no,
go
we
there
won't
because,
go
you know,
there
some of us
again
haven't
about
got.
how bad and they were like blown out and it was the boringest game ever because they couldn't do anything. Yeah, I mean against the Bucks defense, I know it was expected that Patrick Mahomes and he couldn't do jacks. You know, second best QB in the division. You think he could have competed, but no, he couldn't.
Well, so the smack talk is starting early in the AFC West for sure. But you know, there you got to enjoy a game. Um, it was a weird game for a lot of people. I went to Kansas City for the other two kind of, you know, NFL COVID protocol type games, but that was the first time they kind of snuck some people in between us, and that was the vaccinated workers. And just talk about, you know, you already had a drive for vaccinations and how that might be the real key to getting back to full form in the stands again.
Well, well, you know, in Italy, it was shown that a soccer game was one of the biggest reasons that Italy became one of the biggest hotspots early on.
Mm.
There was a soccer game in Borgio. I know I'm mispronouncing that, but the first city in Italy that's like, oh, this is horrible. That happened because of a soccer game,
Mm.
and soccer game, you are cheering, you're yelling, so a lot of air is being
Mm-hmm.
breathed out and
Mm-hmm.
breathed in by
Mm-hmm.
everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So that caused a huge amount of infections, and that's why Italy was so bad. So sporting events, if you're not vaccinated, are super dangerous. They would be a super spreader, indoors or out. So, you know, a crowd like this, that won't be able to happen unless everybody's
Mm-hmm.
immune.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, most likely, if we're lucky, people choose to get their vaccines, and this could happen in September. But, you know, I mean, or, you know, most likely what will happen in the state of California, at least, they will say the only people that are allowed in
Mm-hmm.
are people who could prove they're vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we're getting back to the point where we could be normal. We're having cases drop, but you know they won't stay dropped unless people actually get vaccinated.
Mm. So there is a lot of skepticism as well, and around people who, you know, are skeptical around the vaccine. And, you know, even with those people, or with the people that haven't gotten vaccinated yet, it seems like the vaccination rates at least have helped the caseload kind of go down. And will we see that continue, you think, at least in California into the fall? And will that have an impact? You know, this year we're one of the, you know, in California, one of the few states that didn't have any, you know, shape or form of, you know, capacity fans at all. But do you think maybe in the fall, regardless of, you know, the vaccination, say the vaccination rates aren't that high, do you think California at least might go to a, you know, like a distance type of protocols, or do you think it's going to be all reliable on the vaccination? So what do you see forecast for this fall?
So this is my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that the numbers will drop so far that people will stop getting vaccinated. They're like, oh, I don't need to be vaccinated. No one has it. And then there will be a massive rebound, and that will disrupt fall. I do believe that we will reach a point where we could actually have 20 to 25% fans in the stadium according to the current guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think the guidelines will be revised, where it's like, you know, it will be some number where if people are vaccinated, then that number would be a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, my fear and my prediction is that it'll drop so low, people stop getting vaccinated. People like, you know, not to pick on your age, will just say, oh, I don't need the vaccine anymore. No one has it. I don't know anybody who's infected, and they'll never get it.
Yeah.
And then we'll shoot back up so that, you know, we can't have that kind of stance anymore.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But, you know, I mean, we're on track to have like 50% fans if people keep getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
So
when you look at the 50%, you're looking at, you think, for California.
If we get to 50% people vaccinated, you know, we could. Well, what I should say is we can have 50% of the fans if everybody gets vaccinated.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, if people don't want to get the vaccine, you know, I mean, good luck with your COVID because you're probably going to get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially with these new variants.
So there are some people that are, you know, they want to know when we'll ever get back to the full capacity, and that seems kind of a bits away. But even if everybody was to get the vaccine, would you think this football season would we even see back to like at least no spacing in the stands?
If everybody got the vaccine, let's say by stroke of God, I could vaccinate everybody tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic will be over in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we won't have transmission. We won't have deaths. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, these vaccines have been some of the best vaccines in the history of vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Moderna and the Pfizer and Novavax. Novavax hasn't been released yet.
Yeah.
I mean, they cut down infections by 94%, cut
Wow.
down not a single person in the 78,000 people who have been in all 5 trials have been hospitalized or died. So, you know, I mean, if we vaccinate everybody, the COVID becomes a mild flu for people
Mm-hmm.
at the worst case
Mm-hmm.
scenario. And for most people, they wouldn't even know they had it
Mm-hmm.
if we vaccinate everybody. And then it doesn't matter anymore. So
when you're looking at COVID so far, after almost a year basically in the U.S. or more than a year now from the first case, but do we know enough now that you think we will be able to definitively rid ourselves of the pandemic, at least even with the skepticism? I feel like that seems like such an obstacle with so many people that are skeptical about the vaccine, you know?
Well, it's very interesting. The people who are skeptical about the vaccine right now are white Republicans. It's like there's numbers, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Democrats will 90% will take the vaccine. White Republicans, it's like 40% will take the vaccine, and it's dropping in every group but white Republicans. So what will end up happening is a lot of liberal areas will have all near complete vaccination rates, and for all intents and purposes,
Mm-hmm.
places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Hawaii,
Yeah.
the COVID epidemic will be over. But there'll be places
Mm-hmm.
like Kansas, you know, middle of the Florida, and places like that where you'll still have a low level epidemic pandemic happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be a very interesting split in this country of, you know, LA, New York, we're back to normal. We're eating indoors.
Yeah.
You're probably still doing that in other places, but you're still having people die.
Yeah.
So
well, I know I saw your name pop up probably about 4 years ago when I put my end of 2016. I put my LAFC original deposit down, and since then, you know, traveled with a 3252 from our first game in Seattle to Mexico, everywhere, and it's been an amazing journey. But you know, first of all, just talk about LAFC, that culture, and when do you think, for LAFC purposes, we might be back in the stands as well?
So LAFC, I was actually the first person to ever buy a ticket for LAFC.
Wow.
And I'm number 3 for Angel City Football Club in line to buy tickets. Chargers, I was one of the first LA people to ever buy a ticket. LAFC 3252 is a dangerous thing in a pandemic. You know, everybody jumping, dancing, you know, that will be massive spreads. I cannot see that happening again this year. Stands, you know, we'll get to 20 to 25% people in the stands by May, probably. You know, at the rate we're going, maybe if we're lucky, April.
Wow.
And, you know, I mean, the rules will have to be rewritten to get above 25%.
Yeah.
Right now, the rules were written in October, and that was based on not having a vaccine. If you don't have a vaccine and you're at this level of cases, okay, this many people could come in.
I see.
But now that we have a vaccine, it's like, okay, these people are immune.
Okay.
They probably won't count. So they're going to have to rewrite the rules for who could attend. But right now, you know, perfect world, May, we could have 20% fans, in June 25% fans, according to the current Los Angeles, California guidelines.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. Even if we have to jump for LA Football Club by ourselves in our own rows or something, I'm down for that.
You know what I mean? By May 1st, every person of every age should at least be able to schedule to get a vaccination.
Oh, wow.
Maybe May 15th. That is about the level where it's like every person 18 and above we will have enough vaccines. Right now, like to start, I don't know which side of my screen I'm on. To start, we had very slow ramp up of the vaccine. Over the next 2 months, we're about to have so much vaccine that you will see rapid, you know, right now in California, it's 65 and above. It's going to be 50 and above, 40 and above, 18 and above. Very, 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 very fast. So
awesome. Well, that's some good news. That's some very optimistic news, because I know a lot of us want to get back to the stands, but everybody wants to be safe, and a lot of people are apprehensive about being back out there. If they don't, the conditions aren't right. But for you, what are your conditions to get back in the stands? For you.
I mean, you talk about people being apprehensive. I have a vaccine now. I've gotten my entire family into vaccinated because of the trial and age. We're going to Hawaii in 2 months.
All right.
To visit you.
Awesome.
My wife and I are going to Mexico in 2 weeks because we have the vaccine. We have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I forgot your question. What was the question?
No, I mean, just for the stands, though. I think the vaccination. You're saying if I'm vaccinated, I don't mind jumping for LA Football Club in the 3252 even.
Yeah. I mean, if you're vaccinated, 3252 safe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
The only question is getting people vaccinated because, there's probably 30% of the 3252 who'd say, okay, I don't want the vaccine.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, there is some historic reasons that people don't trust.
Yes.
I mean, the Tuskegee experiment where U.S. just said, okay, you guys have syphilis. We could cure it, but no, we're going to watch you for 40 years and see what happens.
Yeah.
U.S. has a history of
course.
Using minorities as science experiments. And so I could understand why some people wouldn't want to get it. But, that's changing when people say, hey, my grandmother and yada, yada got it and they're fine.
Yeah.
So.
Of course. Well, thanks, Josh. I know I want to take too much of your time. I know you've had to answer so many questions, but I appreciate your willingness to put yourself out there and answer some tough questions. And I'd love to have you on again, but mahalo for joining me.
Anytime. Next time I'm in Hawaii.
For sure. I'll
join you live.
For sure. Take care, Josh. Talk to you again. Aloha.
Aloha.
All right. That was Josh Albrektson. If you get a chance to follow him, Josh is Josh. Albrektson is Albrektson. I think he has a Twitter as well. So he, if you Google his name, he's, I'm sure some of his articles in the New LA Times and OC Register, how he was interviewed for his work around getting people in the vaccine trials, but also going to the Super Bowl and how cool it was for him to be one of the people invited to the Super Bowl. And also because he, is such a huge sports person. So I'm going to tell you the woman behind me, and this is, look, if you are a healthcare worker, you deserve to be there. And I don't take that away from anyone. However, if you are a healthcare worker that loves football, or at least loves sports, or at least likes sports a little bit, it's even better, because you can appreciate it. And the Super Bowl, when you are sitting around basically people that have paid, thousands upon thousands, 6, 7, 8,000, 10,000, maybe more, 20,000 for a ticket, and you got a free ticket and you're leaving at the beginning of the fourth quarter, that demonstrates that you might not be a huge sports person. But Josh, on the other hand, Dr. Albrektson, he is a huge sports fan. And he, understands the nuance of, how teams allow fans into the games and what interaction is like amongst fans in the stands. So that's why it's something a medical professional like him is really positive for us sports fans, because he is one of us. He literally is one of the guys jumping crazy and stuff like that. So it's always good to hear from people like that, because, they want to be in the stands too, just like us. They want to be there. They're not going to sugarcoat things just because, they want to be in the stands so bad. They will follow science. And he's one of those guys. He definitely listens to the science and is a good guy to follow. But some pretty good optimism. So California is important, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But for people in Hawaii, where, California is basically, the state that Hawaii mirrors a lot in a lot of ways. And definitely policy towards sport is going to be mirrored. So that'll be important. But also the University of Hawaii plays most of its away games in the state of California, in every sport, amongst all the sports, right? So what it looks like in the football season is going to be really important, and not only for the Mountain West season, so Hawaii playing its California teams in the mainland, but also the fact that you got a away game that is non-conference, that is a pretty big game for Hawaii in Southern California next year, and that'll be against UCLA, the Bruins, in the Rose Bowl again. And we were there. Hawaii sports fans took a group in 2017. Cole McDonald didn't start that game, but he scored a touchdown. Hawaii got wiped off the map basically that game, and one of the hottest days ever in Southern California, in Pasadena, I think. It was so hot. Super fun tailgate. Shout out to Cisco and all the guys. Even Lee Afusia, Cody Afusia, who played for UH, his dad, and his mom and dad. The Afusia is just super fun people, and they still come and to a lot of events. Their son graduated, they still come, and that's the fun part. Those fans who are still part of the Ohana. But the Afusias were there at UCLA. A lot of fun. Just a reunion, and it'll be one again. But there's a lot of, oh my gosh, can we make plans? Especially to Hawaii sports fans, right? I want to be able to make plans. I want to be able to make some, event programming surrounding the game. And I'm getting closer to doing that. And I'm pretty sure we'll have something out pretty soon. So that'll be something to look forward to for the fall. But what's important is, will California have fans? Because as of right now, it's 0%. No fans allowed right now in California. So even if you are in California and you notice, oh, the men's basketball team is here, or the UH men's volleyball team is down the street, you cannot get into that game. So no chance. Not even hanging outside of the arena. Not that I've tried that. I actually haven't, but I would consider it. Now I wouldn't. I consider if I can get some, credentials. So that'd be cool. So possibly for the Big West tournament, that was announced as well, which is kind of a disappointment, I want to be honest, because the Big West tournament was moved from Anaheim, the Honda Center, where it's been held for a long time, and before that, before Hawaii even joined the Big West, it was actually in the Convention Center, which would have been kind of cool, actually. The Convention Center is basically connected. It's right across like Katella from Disneyland. And they used to just like push bleachers in there. So that's where the Big West tournament used to be. And now it's, it was switched over to Honda Center. And this past year, it was moved to Vegas. And I think also you can create a bubble, more of a bubble, I guess, in Vegas. Not that in a few-day tournament you're going to have so much transmission, and not that you'd be able to catch it even. I mean, you really, for this tournament, it's really like once you get there, it's all in. In the NCAA tournament, they're probably going to want to bubble up a little bit more, because there's some transmission that happens the first week of gameplay that could affect the second week. And if you're a team that's in the Sweet 16, that could be crazy as well. But I think for the Big West tournament, having it in Vegas would have been important for fans as well, because Nevada is slightly less stringent. And the Nevada governor recently announced a plan to return back to, normal, I guess. Normal, whatever normal means, but getting people back out into public spaces, basically. And he already set some dates in March for Vegas to have more or larger public gatherings. So you would have hoped that the Big West tournament was going to be amongst those things that, perhaps we would be able to squeeze a few more fans into. But as it stands right now, there will be 0 fans allowed into the tournament in Las Vegas. So it's a little bit disappointing, considering we've had tours as well at Hawaii Sports Fans. And our tours usually involve an NBA game. And last year's Big West tournament was actually the real start of the lockdown in California. It was literally the group was here and I was going to take him to the Big West tournament. We're going to go see the Laker game as well. We're almost going to see an LAFC game as well, but we instead just ate at a lot of restaurants, because that was basically the official start of the pandemic lockdown in California. So we're approaching that year mark too, which is so crazy. So much has changed. So much has changed with us here at Hawaii Sports Fans. I'm super proud of everything that we've accomplished and done so in a time when, it seemed for at least this company, for Hawaii sports fans, which relies on traveling and being in the stands and doing these very fanatical things like, being in public spaces with a lot of shouting people. Like Josh just said, a lot of shouting, a lot of screaming, that's a lot of transmission, and that's not good for this virus and for the spread. And games can be those places, especially in the 3-2-5-2, like we say with LAFC. We are 3,252 people in one end zone, shoulder to shoulder, standing up next to each other, because they lock the seats up, because you have to stand the whole game and cheer the whole game. That's a part of the contract that you sign with being in the 3-2-5-2. So, but you're sharing airspace with so many people, and there are people in 3-2-5-2 that have died, and some of them were some of the early cases in LA, and I'm pretty sure I was there at the same time as people that have died. So it's you take your risk wherever you go. I've been fortunate personally to have traveled a lot this past football season, from Fresno to Yosemite National Park to Wyoming to Colorado, to Dallas, to Kansas City, to Orlando, to Tampa. That's all just in the last 3-4 months of my traveling, and I've been fine. I mean, could I have been asymptomatic? Possibly, but I've tested regularly enough that I don't think I would have. But I believe in CDC guidelines, such as wearing a mask and distancing. Like, that's not difficult. That's not a really difficult thing to do. So we need to practice that more until you get the vaccine. When you get the vaccine, I guess you can be willy-nilly. You can go out there and just go crazy. But the vaccine is important because it'll get people surrounding people to be safer as well. That's what it means by the herd immunity that we can create with the vaccine, just like our herd of cattle in the field, right? If they're surrounded by a bunch of people that had the vaccine, then nobody can pass it around. Nobody can pass it to them. So even if they're non-vaccinated, and that's what Josh is saying, that's his biggest fear, is the unvaccinated people will not get vaccinated because they'll see the cases. Like I said, we'll see a direct correlation between the amount of people that are vaccinated, an inverse relationship between the amount of vaccinations and the amount of cases, right? So as one goes up, the other goes down. That's my math. That's my math inference, because I'm a math teacher, and or was, but I'm always looking for ways to integrate mathematics into here. But talk about inverse functions, and if you think about a graph, as people are going, as the amount of cases or the amount of vaccinations are going up, we will see a drop. And in Hawaii, I think we're already starting to see a little bit of a drop, and that's probably due to the vaccinations as well. Not that so many people have been vaccinated, but a lot, and we've been staying home, so that will continue. Kyle says, I walked from Old Town Pasadena to the Rose Bowl for that game. Whoa, a few miles. I saw Kyle at that game too. I remember saying hi to him. It was so hot. Sean says, I like going. You better go, Sean, because I'm expecting you to be there. Brad says, your Rose Bowl UH tour can stop by Jet Propulsion Laboratory, NASA, to see Mars crew. Yeah, that's true. That would be cool. So many cool things to see in Southern California. Just so many. Last time my group, they love eating hot dogs. So we did a bunch of hot dogs. We went to Pink's Hot Dogs on La Brea. We went to La Brea Tar Pits. We went to Dodger game. We went to a Rams game. We did a lot. So, and this is, Hawaii sports fans, this is the Hawaii sports fans city. Away from Hawaii is Los Angeles. So, we know all the stops. But Brad, that's a good spot, actually. The NASA lab would be cool. Thanks, Sean. Sean says, Wayne is the ultimate road warrior. Mahalo. Kyle says, I'm vaccinated and feel more confident. Yeah, I think that should give you a level of confidence, a level of protection that is important, because like, you don't have to worry. Like I'm one of those people, like, especially, with elevators, and they're pretty explicit if you use the elevator. If you've used an elevator in the last year, you've probably have seen a sign next to it that says like 2 people at a time or only 2 pods or whatever. And there's always people that try and jam in. And, it's just whatever. It's normal for us to do that. But then there are people that jam in and they're not wearing a mask. And you're just like, okay, am I going to hold my breath for the next who knows how long this elevator ride is? But it's moments like that where it's like you're trapped if you're not vaccinated. But if you're vaccinated, I mean, you're safe. You're good. And Josh talks about, now that his family is vaccinated, he's safe to go. He doesn't feel afraid going anywhere. And I've been going everywhere unvaccinated. So am I saying that am I going to keep rolling the dice? No, I'm going to get vaccinated because I want to get vaccinated personally for me. And I think that's what we all need to do personally. I think that it's really important that we understand the science behind it. And I think, Dr. Fauci, having somebody like that who's been at the head of this from the beginning, despite, the trouble he had with, the last administration, I think, even now more so, we've been able to, and this is a guy like Dr. Fauci who's been working with several administrations prior to, Biden currently. But now, if you go look up on YouTube, hear the things that he has to say. Hear the things the CDC has to say. Just don't listen to medical professionals. Are there medical professionals even that might be skeptical? Yes. So I'm not saying that all will be 100%, but I think the numbers, speak for themselves. I think that it's reasonable. It's reasonable to have a little bit of skepticism, but it's also more reasonable, and honestly healthier, and a lot more, let's say, empathetic to the needs of others to believe in the vaccine, because that's what it does, right? Just like wearing a mask, it's like it protects all the people around you. Not just yourself, but even more so the people around you. Like, I always feel safe. Even if I can't 6 feet, and I try my best, rarely have I been squeezed. Maybe at the airport, traveling on one of those people movers from the terminal to baggage claim. Like that's what I'm saying. And I've traveled pretty extensively, probably for most people super extensively. For me, kind of mellowed out, but still a lot. Like I said, I've traveling to how many U.S. cities and states just in the last 4 months alone. I can still pinpoint when I was in a situation when I felt really tight, when I felt like I was being smothered by other people. So it is possible if you're conscious and aware of it. I'm super cognizant of when people are encroaching in my area, if they're wearing a mask, because I know that is the most effective way to stop the transmission of this virus and still allow me to do what I want to do. Clearly, you can't have the distancing when you are having 100,000 people in one stadium. That's just impossible. Unless the stadium holds, 500,000 people and it's a giant stadium. Like, I don't even know what that would look like, a 500,000 person stadium. But, maybe on Mars we'll build one day. So that's something to think about. But like Josh was saying as well, Dr. Albrektson, he was talking about California's rules, just like Hawaii's tiers, were all created before a vaccine, before the vaccine was even out. So now that the vaccine is out, California in particular has to update its rules for reopening, because and this is what I see, because Josh's opinion, you'll need to have a vaccine to go to the games in the fall, and I can kind of see this. So what will happen, kind of, right now, is at the current level of people being vaccinated, it looks like the caseloads are going down in a rate, and Josh says that he sees April or May as having 20 to 25% of people back in the stands. And if by May everybody can get a shot, that'll probably impact the rules for California, because they'll say, hey, well, now that you can get a vaccine, now that you should be able to get one, you need to get one, especially if you want to go to a game. And some teams will say like, yeah, we don't want to have to do this whole like spacing out thing anymore. Like we want all of our money, especially if you're a season ticket holder. For something too, I've been worried. I've been paying out on these seats at SoFi. You know, Hawaii sports fans, the best seats at SoFi Stadium for all the Rams games, and the best for the visiting team at against the Rams. But how do we know we can sit in those seats next year? And that's something that is a little unnerving because we've already gone through a whole year of not being able to sit in that stadium. And it was the first year of the stadium. I mean, of all times, to not be able to be there is the very first game. And I was only there in cardboard form, which is smiling at me right now. So he's still happy. It was probably a good experience for him. But I can see teams saying, we don't want to worry about spacing it out, because when you talk about spacing out, when you're talking about 6 feet, right? It's not just 6 feet to the sides of you, or, you know, it's 6 feet in front of you, 6 feet behind you, 6 feet to the diagonal of you, 45 degrees that way, 45 degrees that way. I mean, it's a radius. So it's the whole radius, and that it's hard to fit all of these circles. You imagine them plotting them in the seat maps to be able to put people in the seats. That's difficult. For one thing, just to be able to do that, but it's also just humbug for all of those guys, right? They don't want to do that. They're just like, we just want to sell all the seats, and if you go in, you're going. This is also funny, something funny with the Magic game, and I'm just gonna play this clip from how the Magic. I went to Orlando, right? So the NBA game is one of those places where it's like they took about 20% fans, and it was super cavernous. And that's one thing. In an NFL game, you can kind of feel like, okay, I'm at an NFL game and there's just not very many people here, but I'm still at an NFL game. Like, we've all been to games. Aloha Stadium, Hawaii games, unfortunately, recently, right? Where it just seems like there's so much empty space. At an NBA game, it seems amplified, honestly. It just seemed like so few people are there because just the way that they have to squeeze people in. But their entry was very interesting, but I'll just show you a little clip. So I had to do a COVID screening first. Now I have this to get in. COVID screening. Now we can go. Smoking is not permitted anywhere. So I had to do a COVID screening first. Now I have. Yeah. So literally that was it. That booth, it was kind of quick, but there was a booth where they were giving us waivers to fill out. This is an Orlando Magic game. This is February 5th, I believe. It was the Friday before the Super Bowl. And they didn't even do like temperature checks, which is interesting. They were just like, okay, fill out this if you don't have symptoms and blah, blah, blah. And then we'll give you this like little, you saw that little yellow slip of paper. And they're like, okay, show that to the security guard that you signed this waiver that saying that you don't feel sick. So that's interesting. That I would consider on the lower end of protocol, but still, I guess that takes off their liability maybe more than anything. But NBA games, I would love to see more fans, just because it's kind of harder to watch NBA games, to be honest, without that many fans. It's just a way different experience in the game. But at the Super Bowl, you also had to be careful too, because your temperature was above 100.4. You're not getting in, Sully. All right, so we know you can't have 100.4 above that. Thank you.
Have fun, enjoy it.
Thank you. All right, so we know you can't have 100.4 above that. Yeah, so you saw how wide that the area is to walk in. If you're watching the visual version of the Wayne Coito show, you'll see the video as well. If you're listening, I'm trying to give you context as well. But that was entering the Super Bowl and having to go through all these like scansion things, just like, you're at the airport or something. So they try and make a huge walkway, which is kind of normal actually for the Super Bowl. But this time it's not necessary just for the spacing. So there was always spacing. I never felt like crammed ever when I was there, even in any lines. And that's really, for transmission of this virus, which is is it, it's real. It's a real thing that can happen, but it isn't something that can be transmitted just by casually walking past someone. Not that I've heard of. I've never heard of a case where someone just like casually walked by someone else and they're like, oh my gosh, I got affected. Like you kind of have to like really breathe in these these particles from someone else, which will require, actively being around someone else who's sick. So, I never really felt like I was ever going to be in a situation where I could be seriously, a chance for me seriously to be transmitted by anyone. And if so, it was maybe this woman next to me, as you see in the photo, if you're watching. She actually sat next to me at the game, but Kansas City fan. So I sat in a 4-pod actually. But that's pretty safe, in comparison. And it's funny too. I tell people like it isn't the experience, no, to be in a stadium with limited capacity. Is it the same experience as a normal stadium? No. Did it even affect my desire to go to a football game? Yeah, I kind of did. And the regular season, I wasn't really, for the NFL regular season, there wasn't a real desire for me to go to a game. Had the Rams had games? Maybe, because, I'm in LA a lot, most of the time. So that's why I have Rams season tickets in the first place. That's why we got them, because, I'm here. But they didn't have fans. So I didn't really feel like flying to Kansas City or any of those other places, just because I didn't think the value of the tickets was going to be worth it. And I thought the regular season tickets were kind of overpriced, but that is what it is. Certain stadiums are what they are. And I'll talk about pricing with tickets. Well, maybe I'll talk about that on a show one day, but and the dynamic nature of ticket prices these days, right? Things can happen. So I did watch the tickets, but it just didn't, nothing about this NFL season, regular season at least, really got me, interested in traveling for a regular season game. But obviously the playoffs came around and I love the playoffs, and of course I wanted to be there for the Chiefs. So being there for that divisional round and the AFC Championship in Kansas City was really cool, and of course being there for the Super Bowl. But in all of those occasions, I always felt I was always operating under COVID protocols myself, distancing, wearing a mask, and so were the people around me. Orlando might have had some areas that were small kind, like city of refuge kind in Kona. Like they were like the city of refuge where anything goes, because some places, and Josh talked about this too, Dr. Albrektson. He talked about some places are going to have policy and people that are going to be vastly different in the ways that, in the amount of people that are being vaccinated, and the amount of people that are even believing in the virus. So that's going to affect next year as well. So it will be interesting. Sean says NFL beat COVID-19, 0 games canceled. Unreal. Yeah. They did. And, the thing is, like, I expected them to. I'm going to be honest. I expected them to, because they're the NFL. They have the money, and they should be able to. It's pros. Like, I don't expect the college to. And the college didn't. A lot of kids missed games. A lot of teams missed games. So, that'll always be a season that was looked back on as, why did we do that? And a lot of people will, I'm sure this year alone, Duke, Coach Case, who said, why are we playing from the very beginning? And people are saying, oh, it's because your team's not playing very well. And, they're like they might not even make the NCAA tournament this year. So, some of that might go back to, well, we're playing under the virus conditions, but college game is harder. But the NFL was able to beat COVID in terms of playing all of its game on time. And for the whole year, really, I mean, the draft was on time. It went off with basically out a hitch. It was really fun to watch it virtual. And that was last, April, May. How long ago was that already? And now we're already in February. It's really crazy. I mean, how this whole year and this football calendar went by. And thanks to everybody out there who has been a part of the development of this program and programming on this channel, and through Hawaii Sports Fans, because a lot of this was born out of the need to have this programming during a pandemic. And for that, I'm thankful. I tell people I'm not thankful for maybe the pandemic having, virus that's circling me and encircling all of my friends and family and all of my fellow global citizens constantly, and creating, an anxious thing, but also something that could be potentially dangerous, really dangerous for some people. But had we not had this time to reflect on, on what we're doing in life, and it's something I'm always doing. I'm super existential. I'm always thinking about, what I've accomplished and what I'm trying to do. And I always have goals that I'm pursuing constantly, nonstop, multiple goals at the same time. But sometimes I don't have enough time to stop and reflect and make adjustments. And this pandemic forced me into making adjustments, and forced a lot of us into having to make adjustments into our daily lives. And for a company that prides itself on being in the stands and traveling to games, those are two major things that have been, altered by this pandemic in ways that have been extreme, really. It's changed the industry. It's changed everything. You guys know as well, I'm an actor, and that has been another industry that has just been totally rattled by this pandemic. But life goes on, and we press forward, and we create new goals, and we have new initiatives, and these are born out of struggle. That's why, like, a lot of the best music, right, a lot of the best art was created during, like, times of war, and times of scarcity, and times of just pain and sorrow for a lot of people. So I think likewise, this pandemic has inspired a lot of art and a lot of new, a new way of life for a lot of us. And I'm excited for it. I would not go back. Honestly, if I had a choice to go back to before the pandemic, I wouldn't. Like, this has been a crazy year from the last year, from when it started till now. It's been crazy. I mean, I've been in the hospital. I, lost my niece. I, had a root canal. Also good things happened. I got to travel, and, I got to be inspired by places and new opportunities, and create this show. Thank you, Bradley. He says, Wayne Coito show beat COVID and thrived. Yeah, but this, we really did thrive. And I was so nervous, obviously in the beginning, once the panic and the whatever subsided from the fact that I'm canceling tours, and this is Hawaii Sports Fans has been around since February 2012. We just made 9 years old last week. Crazy. 9 years old already. And, over 20 tours, 6 Super Bowls, AFC Championship, multiple NFC Championships. We've done everything, and we have so much more to do. Yet this pandemic can still be crushing, and it's not going to crush us for sure. Instead, it is only making us better and stronger, and super excited for what this future holds, because it's different than where I would have been a year ago, where I was a year ago, the person I was a year ago, the company this was a year ago. So different, and today so much poorer. But outside of that, it's grown so much in strength, and it's grown so much in just the respect and the exposure that we've gotten throughout the islands, throughout the mainland, and that happened because of the time that we've been indoors during the pandemic. So I'm excited. This studio, Sports Cave Studio, I've been putting some different adjustments into it. I just added a keyboard, actually a piano keyboard. So I'm going to be playing like the organ, and maybe potentially take me out to the ball game during baseball season. That would be kind of fun. So I'm always adding new things. And all of this, like I said, is all because of the pandemic really happening, and forcing me to start over, and forcing me to readjust. Not start over, but take the strengths and finally cut away the parts that aren't helpful. And that should be for all of us, right? Let's cut away the parts that don't serve us in our lives, and really embrace the parts that make our lives better and inspire us to be better. Bradley says, AEW Dynamite next. The Big Show Paul White signed with. Yeah, Big Show signed with AEW. That's right. So wrestling, we got to get more wrestling. We got so many wrestling fans out there. Yeah, we got to get we got to get McKenna Cruz on here too, because he's a major friend of this show. So one of the names in locals wrestling in Hawaii. But no, we got to do WrestleMania. We got to do a lot of wrestling, so for sure. Kyle says, having to adjust, pivot also happened to me. Totally understand. Yeah, so Kyle, he gets it too. You know, it's one of those times in our lives where a lot of us as fans, and this is, I hope we've been able to connect with each other even more because of the show, because of Hawaii sports fans and what we've been able to do. We've been able to even go on the road still. So if I've met you out there, you know, it's crazy. We've been able to still do things in the pandemic, and we're only going to grow more. So I can tell you this fall, particularly, get ready. Corvallis, Oregon, for sure. We're going to go to Portland. LA, we've been talking about that a lot on the show. So, you know, because we're talking about the stands, and it looks like for sure by football season, we will have at least some form of capacity. Might not be 100, and you might need to have a vaccine. And that's kind of been the, you know, the theme of the show. Sean says, The Miz is awesome. Yes, The Miz is awesome. Lots of wrestling references. Here we go. I got all the wrestling people up going, talking about it now. Brad says, if Bretman Rock can get reality show on MTV, you can get ESPN show. Keep manifesting. We believe in you. Mahalo, Bradley. Yeah, maybe I will. You know, Bretman Rock, that's cool to see local artists, people from Hawaii thriving and on the national stage. But I'm just, you know, thankful to do what I'm doing right here. And I'm going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to, you know, as a family of listeners, as a family of sports fans, we're going to, you know, continue to just love sports even more. I can tell you that the pandemic hasn't stopped that at all. That's for sure. If anything, the pandemic has, you know, inspired more inside of me, inspired me to do even more, to want to be a part of even more. And I can't wait. But mahalo all for joining today on the show. Go back and listen from the beginning if you haven't. Talk with Dr. Josh Albrektson, who was there in the Super Bowl, one of the 7,500 healthcare workers selected to go to the Super Bowl. He talks about why he was chosen and why the vaccine is super important. So go back, rewind, do what you got to do. I'm going to get this up on YouTube and the Hawaii Sports Fans channel. But that's it for tonight, guys. I'll see you next time. Aloha.